phones and your mouths, and we're going to start the podcast. We're live. All right, everyone, we are live. Live from Google Fiberspace in downtown Austin, from KUT News and the Texas Tribune. This is The Ticket.
We demand our liberty.
You and I know that America deserves better.
Americans have come back from some pretty tough economic times.
Crony capitalism is indeed alive and well.
And we are going to make our country great again.
Making our country great again. Thanks, everyone. I'm Ben Philpott.
And I'm Jay Root.
This week on the show, it's time for the second GOP debate. The first time candidates debated, it was supposed to mark the beginning of the end for Donald Trump. And it was going to provide a second chance for Rick Perry to show that he could make it through a debate.
Ben, we were wrong on both of those predictions. So what should we be watching for tonight? We'll talk live via Google Hangout with Jennifer Rubin, writer of the Right Turn blog for the Washington Post.
And with all the twists and turns that we've already seen in this 2016 race, Jay and I will go back over some of the defining moments defining moments that have gotten us to where we are today.
Then on the straight ticket, for the first time, audience participation. We'll be taking questions from the audience. And for those of you watching at home, send it to us on Twitter. Just mention @theticket2016.
But first, Jay, there's somebody who's not a part of the debates tonight. I know it's a little sad moment for you.
It is a little sad.
Former Governor Rick Perry dropped out last week.
He didn't even make it to Iowa.
Didn't even make it to Iowa.
You know, I really thought he was going to make it to Iowa. The burn rate that he was going through on his money, 63% burn rate. So money coming in, 63% going out the door.
I think he assumed that he would be considered a stronger candidate, a more legitimate candidate, and the money would keep coming in. You know, somebody keeps asking, how is Bobby Jindal still in the race? Rick Perry's out. How are Gilmore, Pataki, how are any of these people in? And it's because they never hired staff.
Right.
They don't have expenses. It's them with like a car driving around.
Well, that was the problem, was that Perry went in sort of top heavy, and then they ran out of money, and then they went into this death spiral for like 3 weeks where it was like, okay, they got rid of Iowa. Nobody in Iowa left. Now New Hampshire, they shutting down New Hampshire, and then South Carolina. And they kept saying, no, rumors of my demise are premature. and then, no, actually they weren't.
They weren't premature. So no second chance. Well, I guess he had his second chance. No further second chance for Governor Perry. Ted Cruz doing better, and we'll get to that a little bit later in the show. But I guess, why don't we go ahead and bring up our special guest for the evening. Jay, let's you and I move back our chairs here. There we are, everyone. Jennifer Rubin with Right Turn joining us tonight. So you're here. We'll kick this off. If there's one thing I know about putting on a live show of a podcast, it's that you can't do it without a big name guest.
And we're fortunate to have a big name columnist to help us understand the Republican field, Jennifer Rubin, blogger at the Washington Post, where she writes the Right Turn blog, a column from the conservative perspective. Jennifer, thanks for joining us tonight.
It's nice to be here. And Jay, it's somewhat appropriate since I think you and I first spoke when we were talking about Rick Perry back in 2012.
That's right, 4 years ago.
Maybe let's start there. Are you surprised that Governor Perry is the first Republican out of the race?
I am, and it does say something about our political environment. I think he is a victim of Trump. He really sucked up all the oxygen, sucked up all the money and the attention, did not allow him to even get onto the main stage, where, as you say, it was his one opportunity to redeem himself from 2012. So I think you're right, he spent too much money early on. He was a victim, frankly, of a very frivolous political environment. Ironically, he got serious when the electorate got unserious.
Jennifer, what do you think any candidate can do to confront Donald Trump? I mean, it seems like the harder you hit him, the further he rises.
Well, if you look at some of the more recent polls, there's an interesting phenomenon going on. Although he's still in the high 20s in these public polls, which I think include a lot of people who are not really primary voters, you'll see how close Ben Carson is now getting to him. How did he get there? He got there not by attacking Trump, but by coming up with a distinctive outsider persona that somehow appealed on some level to voters. It's clear political insiders are out this time around, but perhaps a more soft-spoken, more rational, more relatable outsider is not. And that, I think, opens the door for Carly Fiorina, who will be on the stage this evening, and maybe for some of the governors.
Well, I would assume that Trump and Carson go into this night with targets on their backs. Maybe not so much Carson, but Trump definitely. How do you think the candidates are going to handle Trump this second time around?
Well, I think it depends on whether you're talking about the candidates who have money and just need to not make errors, maybe improve their performance, and those candidates who may be following Rick Perry. I suspect there are a few candidates out there who are in the low single digits, whose coffers are getting very low. And if they don't get a real pop from this debate, come September 30, when the window closes on the third quarter for fundraising, you're going to see some very bleak numbers. And unfortunately, it's very hard to run at the presidential level, particularly once you get past those first four primaries, if you don't have a lot of money in the bank. And it is a problem for people like Scott Walker, Chris Christie. If they are toiling in single digits and they don't break out as in a debate like this, they may not make it to a place like Iowa or New Hampshire, where they might be actually successful if they ever got to the voters.
You talked about Carly Fiorina. There's been a lot of speculation that she would be sort of the one to take Donald Trump on tonight. She's was in the kiddie debate, they called it, the first debate, and she's moved up now into the big leagues. What do you think about her, and what are you hearing about her from your sources, from Republicans you talk to?
I think she really is a political talent, even though she's running as a outsider. She ran, as you know, for Senate from California, wiped out, did not run a great race. She must have learned an awful lot since then, because she's been one of the more disciplined candidates. She has been able to tap into voters' discontent without herself appearing to be unhinged or irrational. She's actually learned quite a bit about foreign policy, both by, I think, studying up and because she held some advisory roles in government with the CIA and with the Defense Department. She tends to do very well when voters get a chance to see her on the stump, in these cattle calls that they have around the country. So tonight is a very big night for her. There are still a lot of people who have never seen her, don't really know who she is. So whether she attacks Trump or she just independently makes an impression, she stands to gain a lot tonight, I think.
How is it different for a woman candidate, and particularly given all of the things that Donald Trump has said about women that have been very offensive? What kind of opportunity does that give her? The
irony is she, at least at the beginning, was running against another woman, Hillary Clinton. Now the question is whether her feminist outlook, and she really does have a feminist outlook, and she has defined what it means to be a conservative feminist. It depends whether that now can be used as an advantage to Donald Trump. She really has a couple ways about going after him, and they're not necessarily mutually exclusive. One is to raise the issue that he's insulting and demeaning towards women. That's not what the party should stand for. That's an impediment to their chances in November 2016. The other is to simply outshine him, to answer questions with more detail, more finesse, to catch him on factual and logical errors, which is pretty easy to do. And she may do both. She's very quick on her feet. If you've seen her in a debate, I've interviewed her a couple times, trying to throw at her some slightly offbeat questions. She takes a pause for a second and then spills out a perfectly crafted answer in a couple minutes. She's very skillful, and I think we'll see that on display tonight.
Bringing it back to Texas just real quickly, what kind of role Texas is going to be up with the fifth wave of votes, fifth wave of primaries that happen on that Super Tuesday? What kind of role do you see Texas playing in this GOP nomination?
Well, for one thing, as Jay knows, it's the home of a lot of money. Like California, it comes later, though not as late as California, but it is the home of a lot of money. And the one thing that Rick Perry is leaving behind are donors who are no doubt being very assiduously courted by the other candidates. So one role that it will have will be money. Another, I think, will be really sort of a choice for the party, and it's I think a temperamental choice and a philosophical choice. The party has a bunch of candidates who are Southern, who are Midwestern, who are in the tradition of what has become the post-Reagan Republican Party, mostly Southern, mostly white, socially conservative. That's one option. The other option is a slew of candidates who really don't match that profile at all. You have John Kasich, you have Chris Christie, you have Jeb Bush. These are people who come from more urban or at least suburban areas outside of the traditional strongholds for the Republican Party. And I think there's a bit of a contrast here, and we'll have to see whether voters decide that maybe they've had enough of the Southern governors or the Bush family who comes from Texas, or maybe they haven't. And I think there is a real demographic philosophical split that sometimes overlaps with this insider-outsider divide, but is also geographic and, as I said, a bit of a temperament, tone issue.
So as you're getting ready to sit down and watch this debate tonight, I wanted to bring up something that you said in a column about Governor Perry dropping out of the race. You ended it saying, "The country needs a serious, responsible Republican Party. I am increasingly worried it is on the brink of extinction." That's not a very optimistic statement.
No.
What do you hope to hear tonight that shows you it's not on the brink of extinction?
Well, I was somewhat cheered actually by the undercard debate, which I was not able to watch all of it, getting ready to join you folks, but a little bit of it, and seeing Lindsey Graham, who is a serious person who knows something about foreign policy, talk extensively and in his usual witty and funny manner about that. I, for one, would like to see a lot more discussion of foreign policy, which was almost neglected entirely in the first debate. That is a bar that all of these candidates are going to have to climb over. Can you be a credible commander-in-chief? And whether it's basic knowledge of the way the world is working, or some policy ideas, or some concrete things that they would do, rather than simply throwing around slogans about the dangers of Islamic terrorism. A more informed, more nuanced discussion of the whole variety of foreign policy issues out there would give me quite a bit more comfort that perhaps there are one or more candidates there who might credibly become a presidential nominee.
You mean you weren't impressed with Donald Trump saying he has some plans?
Yes, I think the idea was to steal their oil or something like that. I didn't quite understand how that worked out. Maybe Jake Tapper will ask him about that tonight.
Well, thanks very much. Jennifer Rubin writes the Right Turn blog at the Washington Post. Thanks so much for joining us, and enjoy the debate tonight.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. All right. Well, Jay and I will scoot back to pretend we like each other. And sorry, the audio was a little rough there at the start, but then it picked up. Everybody understand that all right? Okay, good. Excellent. Good. All right. Well, now we move on to kind of, this is going to be the defining moments of the campaign so far. We're going to, of course, do this stump interrupted style for those of you who have been fans of the podcast. So here we go. We're just over 4 months away from the Iowa caucuses, and man, we've already had so much to talk about out on the campaign trail.
Which works out well for us since we do have a weekly podcast on the presidential race.
Yes, true. In fact, there's already been so many twists and turns that Jay and I just wanted to run down a few moments that we think have defined the campaign so far. And as tribute to his official exit from the race, let's kick off this Stump Interrupted Rewind with Rick Perry from the first GOP B team debate. I don't like calling it the kitty debate. I think it's the B team debate. And Matt, are you back there? Are you ready?
For 30 years, this country has been baited with that. All the way back to when Ronald Reagan signed a piece of legislation that basically allowed for amnesty for over 4 million people, and the border still not secure.
Did you catch that? Let's hear it one more time.
Ronald Reagan, Ronald Reagan, Ronald Reagan, Ronald Reagan, Ronald Reagan, Ronald Reagan.
Look, everybody who knows me knows that I love me some Rick Perry, at least in the way that a journalist can love a newsmaker. And I think we all know that Rick Perry is adept at making news, not always in a way that's good for him, though it usually works out for us. Having said that, I always thought that after 2012, after that disastrous oops-filled campaign, that Rick Perry would have a hard time breaking out of this deep track narrative that he was really a hopeless bumbler. So in the first debate, when he mispronounced the name of Ronald Reagan, the Gipper, and called him Ronald Reagan, that's when I knew. This thing is over. He's reached a critical mass of gaffes. He's not going to get a second chance to make a first impression.
All right, moment number 2. Donald Trump isn't impressed.
But Frank, let me get to it. He hit me. He's not a war hero. He's a war hero. He's a war hero because he was captured. I like people that weren't captured, okay? I hate to tell you. Do you agree with that? He's a war hero because he was captured.
So that's Donald Trump obviously attacking John McCain, whether or not he was a hero. Based on current poll numbers, you might think that Donald Trump's defining moment in the 2016 race was simply when he got in the race. But I think it was actually what happened a few weeks later. You see, the press and even the establishment Republicans all believed that the Trump campaign would flame out quickly. And when Trump attacked the 2008 Republican nominee for president for being a prisoner of war, all of the doubters said, there you go, this is it, it's the beginning of the end. Only it wasn't. So this was one of my key moments because it was when we all learned that Donald Trump was not going away quickly.
And when Trump didn't go away, it forced the rest of the GOP field to change how they campaign, which brings us to another defining moment, Scott Walker on NBC's Meet the Press.
Why are we always talking about the southern border and building a fence there? We don't talk about a northern border. Where if this is about securing the border from potentially terrorists coming over.
Well,
we want to build a wall north of the border.
Some people have asked us about that in New Hampshire. They've raised some very legitimate concerns, including some law enforcement folks that brought that up to me at one of our town hall meetings about a week and a half ago. So that is a legitimate issue for us to look at.
Everyone remember when Scott Walker was a front runner? I'm going to pick on him here for saying that we should consider a border fence between the U.S. and Canada. But this moment is essential for me because it's an example of how GOP candidates started changing what they were saying because of Donald Trump. All of a sudden, immigration plans had to be turned up to 11 to compete with Donald Trump.
And when the rest of the GOP field tries to compete with Donald Trump, they make mistakes. And unlike Trump, they can't seem to shake them. Like this one, when Jeb Bush spent some time on the Bill Bennett radio show talking about Trump's immigration policy and his own views.
There ought to be greater enforcement. That's legitimate, side of this. Greater enforcement so that you don't have these, anchor babies, as they're described, coming into the country.
If it could have just ended there, maybe he'd be okay. But instead, he had arguments with the press about whether or not anchor babies was an offensive term. Oh, and then Bush said, no, I meant Asian anchor babies, not Hispanic. To which Donald Trump, here he is again, responded on Twitter, quote, Asians are very offended that Jeb Bush said that anchor babies applies to them as a way to be more politically correct to Hispanics. A mess. I think Donald Trump has been very good at pointing out what he thinks are the other candidates' mistakes, and the other candidates don't seem to have a way to come back to it.
But hey, the 2016 race isn't just about the Republican field. There are Democrats running. Here's a defining moment delivered all the way back in March when Hillary Clinton first talked to the press about her emails.
Looking back, it would have been better for me to use 2 separate phones and 2 email accounts. I thought using one device would be simpler, and obviously it hasn't worked out that way.
Would have been easier? That's an understatement. Clinton's emails have given the press and her detractors plenty to talk about. And now every time a new poll comes out, or Senator Bernie Sanders has a big rally, or Joe Biden hints that he might get into the race, people point to those emails.
You know what I've decided about Biden?
What did you decide about Biden?
He's the Democrats' best answer to Donald Trump because he's sort of authentic and he kind of says what comes to his mind. And even though, I mean, he obviously has been in government his entire life and doesn't have that businessman experience that Donald Trump has, he still, I think strikes a lot of Democrats as more authentic than Hillary Clinton.
You mean Joe Biden doesn't have to schedule time to be spontaneous?
Exactly. He's a plain speaker.
Yes.
Plain spoken.
Well, and that's the thing. You and I think talked about this on the last podcast. What do people want? They want somebody who is seen as an outsider, who at the very least is seen as not a prepackaged product.
I think that's what's hurt Scott Walker too, because I really thought Scott Walker was going to do great. I mean, I saw him and I thought he looked good on the stump, but it is canned. He does come across as kind of canned, and like this is like the wrong year to be canned.
Yeah, you're right.
Oh, it's me now. Sorry.
You're allowed.
We'll wrap up this trip down memory lane with a look at the possible future of the GOP race. We know that Trump and Ben Carson are at the top for now, but who's waiting in the wings if either should stumble? Here's a quick clip from the Ted Cruz and Donald Trump rally against the Iran nuclear deal.
And if Iran will not stop its nuclear program, we will stop it for you.
I've been doing deals for a long time. I've been making lots of wonderful deals, great deals. That's what I do. Never, ever, ever in my life have I seen any transaction so incompetently negotiated as our deal with Iran.
Okay, so when Donald Trump started shooting up in the polls, our former governor, Rick Perry, went after him with hammer and tong.
Yep.
How did that work out for him?
Nope.
He plummeted in the polls. Ted Cruz, of course, took an entirely different tack. He embraced Trump repeatedly, continues to. The culmination of that was this rally outside the White House last week to blast the nuclear treaty with Iran. Cruz himself has said that Trump's surge has helped him, and the polls bear that out. Regardless of what you think about Cruz, tactically, his association with Trump has paid off big time, and I think this is a marriage worth keeping an eye on.
When we may see a little bit of that marriage again tonight, I guess we both assume we will, as the rest of the candidates jump all over Trump to try to knock him out of the top spot. You will see Cruz. It'll be interesting if the CNN people say, do you have a problem with what Donald Trump said about this to Ted Cruz?
Well, it's also going to be interesting to see if Donald Trump goes after CNN for not donating the proceeds of tonight, which they jacked up rates, apparently. That's what he said.
Well, and the debate's 2 hours and 45 minutes,
right.
So lots of ad spots. Well, you know, and if you thought those highlights so far were fascinating, just wait for what we'll get over the next 4 months, which is about how long it is until we get to that Iowa caucus. All right, do people have some questions? We've got a microphone right up here. If anyone wants to walk up, we'll take a few questions. You know, we do this at the end of every podcast. Nobody should be surprised.
It's Q&A time.
It's Q&A time. Microphone's right there. Come on.
Who's got a question?
Oh, there we go. All right, good. So you stand there a second. Hold on. Before you start the question, let me read in to start the segment. Sorry. And then I'm, by the way, if anyone's up there asking a question and they see me on the phone, I'm not ignoring you. I'm looking to see if Twitter sent anything in. So, all right. Now, here's the straight ticket.
It's Q&A time.
Each week, we ask our listeners to send us questions about the 2016 race. Tonight, you get to ask us directly. We've got a microphone set up down front, so don't be shy. Come on down.
And we'll also take a couple of the questions we've been asked on Twitter. So those of you watching this online, don't feel left out.
All right, so first person, just go ahead and give us your name and what's your question?
Hey, my name's Paul Theobald. My question is, I see Trump has got a good, probably solid 20% of the Republican base. He's touched a nerve that nobody else has really grabbed onto. Since he's self-funded and he can continue on with that, I see him possibly going to the convention. What are your thoughts about that, and how do you see that playing into the field?
I definitely think Donald Trump's going to be at the Republican National Convention. And
Reince Priebus has not slept since Donald Trump entered the race, I think.
And I think the way to think about the Trump candidacy is that it's very similar to the Ross Perot candidacy. It's very much like an independent candidacy. I mean, how many Republicans do you know are talking about raising taxes on hedge funds? I mean, he's saying, or that have said nice things about single payer health care. So the $64,000 question is, are these Republican primary voters, or are they just, are they some Democrats and some independents and a whole mix of people? And can he get those people to show up at the primary?
And I think also kind of to your question about what does this look like moving forward? We had on one of our podcasts, we had on a national Hispanic activist, Republican activist, who, essentially talked about he said that Reince Priebus promised Hispanic Republicans that if somebody stepped out of line and started saying things that were anti-immigrant, anti-Hispanic, that he would come in as the chairman of the Republican Party and say, okay, stop it. And that hasn't happened. And I think that his concern was that as Trump continued on, this would be worse and worse for Republican-Hispanic relations, would make, they've done a lot of great outreach here in the state of Texas to Hispanics, have been able to increase Hispanic turnout for Republicans in Texas, but all that stuff could disappear under another 4, 5, 6 months of Donald Trump. And as we said earlier, what he is making the rest of the Republican Party, not making, but we've seen the rest of the Republican Party kind of trying to match him on some of that Hispanic rhetoric.
He's definitely making them sweat. It quit being funny for them about 2 months ago.
All right, excellent. We have a line now. Go ahead, sir.
Hi, my name is John Donor, and I wanted to know from Jay, now that Rick is out of the race, which candidate do you think will bring us the most victories and is most likely to make America great again?
The most what?
Victories.
Victories? Bring us the most victories?
And make America great again. Most likely.
Well, that would be an opinion. I can't express an opinion.
Oh, come on.
I think, I tell you what, I'll tell you who I like Jennifer Rubin said. I agree that Carly Fiorina is going to bring it to Donald Trump tonight. And I think she's a very interesting candidate to watch. I mean, this whole election has been about outsiders. And so, I'm looking for Ben Carson and Carly Fiorina to really tangle with Donald Trump tonight.
All right, we have time for probably one more quick one. Go ahead. Or actually 2 more. I've got one Twitter one. Go ahead.
Yes, Donald Trump has supported Hillary Clinton. How do you think this might impact his campaign?
I think that if that were the first inconsistency that Donald Trump has as a candidate, that it might be a problem. I think that considering he has multiple logic issues with positions here and positions there, I just think it all blurs together, and nobody cares is too strong of a word, or phrase. But yeah, I mean, he's done so many different things that seem to not quite make sense. That something like that just doesn't. I mean, you could talk about his stance on abortion or same-sex marriage or the Clintons or on and on and on. But nobody, I don't know, it doesn't seem to be affecting what Republican voters think. So real quickly, one more before we go. We do have one Twitter question that came in. Why do candidates with little to no chance even run? Chafee, Webb, Gilmore, Pataki, Perry, why are they even out there running and spending money in the race?
I'll take a crack at that. I've got 2 answers to that. The first one is that these candidates do think they're going to win. I mean, if you get to know politicians, they, in the State House of Representatives, you've got 150 speaker candidates. In the 31-member Senate, who the lieutenant governor presides over the Senate, they all think they should be lieutenant governor. Anybody who's in politics ultimately thinks that the ultimate prize is the presidency. The second reason is that a lot of people run and then they get a platform and then they run again and 4 years later. And if you distinguish yourself, Like, for example, Carly Fiorina, for example, she came out of nowhere. She went from the kiddie bait to the grown-up debate. If she doesn't do well this time or she gets close, whatever, she could either be a VP nominee or she could run again in 4 years.
Yeah, they all see a path to victory, and they just hope that that path plays out.
They're not like you and
No. But, you know, that's it this week, though, from the Ticket folks. Thanks so much to everyone for coming out and watching us online. For those of you who just discovered us because of this live show, we've got another 20 episodes of the Ticket on iTunes. So just check them out. You know, use them during your morning commute.
So we've got episodes breaking down the campaigns of all the major GOP candidates, along with fun episodes explaining campaign finance. That was one of my favorites. And I guess my all-time favorite, Why Iowa, which explains how the Hawkeye state became so important in the first place. It's actually very surprising. I really strongly recommend you listen to it. And whether or not it should keep its first election status.
And we also do, I forgot to write this down, we also do have one on Bernie Sanders, Hillary Clinton, and Joe Biden as well. They're on our iTunes archive. We want to hear all the podcasts that we've done so far. You can just visit our brand new website, theticket2016.com. There you can listen to episodes and subscribe on iTunes, SoundCloud, or Stitcher, or any other podcast catcher that you use. The Ticket is a co-production of KUT News and the Texas Tribune. Matt Largy is our editor. He also ran sound tonight there in the back and helped in several other ways getting us set up for tonight. Thanks so much to the people here at Google Fiberspace for letting us come out and stream the show live. And last, but certainly not least, our theme music is by Ben Root. Thanks for listening.